Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into a chapter that I think for many is a bit of a speed bump in Genesis.
You just read through it quickly to get to the next part of the story.
Exactly. Genesis chapter 10. It's known as the Table of Nations, but it's so much more than just a list of names. It feels like the original map of everyone.
That's a great way to put it. It's the foundational geography and really the ethnology for the entire biblical narrative. It connects Adam and Noah to every major ancient civilization.
And our sources for this, especially the incredible research from the UNFIJ team, they really stress something important.
They do, that this is history. This isn't myth. And our mission today is to really unpack how this record sets the stage for God's global plan.
A plan that takes us from just 8 people on an ark to a whole world of nations.
A world fractured by language and geography, but still completely within God's sovereign hand.
Okay, so to get into that framework, we have to start right at the beginning, verse 1.
Right, the superscription. It's in Genesis 10.1, and it reads, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood."
That word generations, the Hebrew toledot, it's a key word in Genesis, isn't it? It's doing some heavy lifting here.
It's doing immense work. It's a major structural marker. Think of it like a new chapter heading in the story of the world.
So we're pivoting.
We're pivoting hard. The earlier chapters were about cosmic history creation, the fall, a universal flood. But this toledot signals a shift. We're now moving into patriarchal history, ethnic history. It's how the narrative zooms in from the universal to the specific.
And in doing that, it immediately answers the big question hanging over everything after the flood.
Which is?
Did God's plan fail? Did the judgment just end everything?
And the answer is a resounding no. The fact that this table even exists is proof of God's faithfulness. He told Noah to be fruitful and multiply, and here it is. Here's the fruit.
Humanity continues. The purpose continues.
It does. And the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasizes this point as a testament to God's covenant fidelity. It didn't fail, it was reset.
And it's not just a history of humanity in general. This is all funneling somewhere, isn't it? It has a very specific destination.
Absolutely. The entire structure is designed to preserve and trace the messianic line. You have to remember, the lineage of Jesus Christ, which we see in the New Testament.
In Luke's Gospel.
Right, in Luke 3.36. It traces directly back through the names we're about to discuss. Shem, Arphaxad, all of them. This isn't a dead list, it's a living document that shows God's sovereignty over every single generation.
So if God is that meticulous, that sovereign over thousands of years of family lines just to bring the Redeemer, what does that mean for us? What's the practical action here?
The primary action, drawing from the You Need Faith in Jesus team's insights, has to be recognizing our own generational responsibility.
To pass things down.
Exactly. Just as God preserved humanity physically through Noah and Shem, we are called to faithfully pass down the knowledge of the Lord to those who come after us. We're all links in that same sovereign chain.
That's a powerful charge. Okay, let's get into the text itself. The table starts with the descendants of Noah's first son listed, Japheth.
It does, and this line, detailed in Genesis 10.2-4, represents this huge first wave of dispersion. They're moving north and west from, the cradle of civilization.
Let's read that first group, Genesis 10.2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshech and Tiras. And then it continues with their children in the next verses.
Right. Gomer's line gives us Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. And Javan's line gives us Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim.
And these aren't just random names. They correspond to real places and peoples.
Oh, absolutely. These are concrete geographic markers. Gomer is linked to the Sumerians in Anatolia. Magog very likely points to the Scythians north of the Black Sea.
The great nomadic peoples.
The great nomads, exactly. Madai is the Medes. Javan is consistently connected to the Ionians, the early Greeks. Tubal and Meshech are tribes in eastern Anatolia. Tiras is probably an early people in the Aegean area.
That is a massive territory.
Yeah.
We're talking about the foundations of Europe and Asia Minor. What does this tell us about who these early Japhetic people were?
It suggests they were pioneers. Maritime and nomadic traditions seem to be strong with them. They were moving fast into less settled lands. And as the You Need Faith in Jesus team highlights, what you're really looking at here are the foundational roots of the Indo-European peoples.
The Greeks, the Romans, the Celts, all of them trace back to this.
This is their origin story. And the text gives us a concluding thought on this section that defines the nature of their settlement.
Let's hear it.
It's Genesis 10.5. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families and their nations.
The Isles of the Gentiles. That's a fascinating phrase. It's not just islands, is it?
No. The Hebrew word aem often means more than just a physical island. It can mean distant coastlands, maritime regions, basically anywhere you'd need a ship to get to. It reinforces this idea of them as navigators, spreading across the Mediterranean.
And the word Gentiles, goyim, here it just means nations, right?
But, correct. At this point, it's a neutral term. It just means distinct national groups. The real theological weight comes from the fact that this division, this separation into nations, wasn't an accident. The text presents it as ordained.
That's a huge idea.
Yeah.
That God actually determined the boundaries of their homes.
It is. And it's a concept that the Apostle Paul picks up on centuries later.
In Athens.
In Athens, on Mars Hill. And this is a connection our sources stress is essential. In Acts 17.26, Paul says, "And hath made of one blood all nations of men, for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and hath determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation."
Wow. He's quoting the principle right out of Genesis 10. So the existence of different nations, different languages, that's part of God's deliberate plan.
It's part of the divine mandate. Now, human sin obviously distorts those boundaries with war and conquest, but the initial foundation of diversity is from God. It was a mechanism to prevent all of humanity from uniting in rebellion.
Which is exactly what we're going to see later.
Exactly. And if you recognize that God ordained these national and linguistic groups, it gives the missionary enterprise a very specific target.
It's not just a vague command to go into all the world.
No, it's a specific, historically grounded mandate. The You Need Faith in Jesus team really hammers this home. The nations of Japheth, who were once considered far off, are brought near through Christ. The dispersion in Genesis creates the very people groups the gospel must reach.
So the practical application for you listening today is to see that mission.
Right. To support the work of translating the Bible and preaching the gospel into every one of these tongues and territories, we should see this amazing linguistic diversity not as a barrier, but as God's chosen vehicle for his global glory.
That is a powerful way to look at it. Okay, so from the northward spread of Japheth, the table shifts. Now we move to the second line, the descendants of Ham.
And this is where things get complicated. This line covers the great civilizations of the South, but it also introduces this theme of organized human defiance against God.
We see the list of Ham's sons in Genesis 10.6 to 7.
Yes, the core sons are Cush and Mizraim and Phut and Canaan, and then it lists the sons of Cush and Rama.
Geographically, where are we now?
We're in Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Levant, that critical land bridge. Mizraim is the consistent Hebrew word for Egypt. Cush is the region south of Egypt, what we call Ethiopia or Sudan. Phut is likely Libya and North Africa.
These were the ancient superpowers. They built massive, sophisticated civilizations very quickly. But there's a shadow over this line, isn't there, from Ham's disrespect of his father Noah?
There is. There's a complex spiritual struggle here. But, and this is crucial, they are never, ever excluded from God's redemptive plan. Even a nation like Egypt, which becomes the house of bondage for Israel, is still offered glory in the future.
So they're not just the villains of the story.
Not at all. And the You Need Faith in Jesus team points to a beautiful prophecy in Psalm 68.31.
What does it say?
It declares, "Princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands unto God." It shows God's heart for them, transcending all the historical conflict.
And we see that prophecy fulfilled in the New Testament.
We do, very early on. The story of the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8 is a direct and powerful proof. Here's this high official, a descendant of Cush, who comes seeking God and is saved. It's a clear sign that God has always intended to save people from every family on earth.
Okay, so with that context, historical enemies, but also objects of God's mercy, what's a practical step for us? How should we view people or groups that seem historically difficult?
The application is to guard your heart, aggressively. Guard it against prejudice. We have to remember that while all nations are fallen, every single one of them, as the You Need Faith in Jesus team reminds us, is capable of producing a remnant for the Lord.
A powerful reminder. And that brings us to maybe the most famous and disruptive figure in this entire chapter, Nimrod.
Nimrod, he's a total exception in the text. He's not just listed, he's given a biography. He is the architect of empire and rebellion.
Let's read it. It starts in Genesis 10.8. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth,
Just stop there for a second. His name, it's from the Hebrew verb marad,
which means
to rebel. His identity is rebellion, and the text calls him a mighty one giver. This isn't just about being strong. It implies a warrior-tyrant, someone who imposes his will.
the world's first emperor.
Yeah.
And the text defines him by his skill.
Yes, Genesis 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, hunter here probably means a hunter of men, a conqueror.
And what about that phrase, before the Lord? It sounds defiant.
It is. The consensus of the scholarship we've reviewed is that it means doing it in God's face. In open, brazen defiance of God's authority, he was building an anti-God kingdom from the ground up.
And we see the beginning of that kingdom in the next verse.
Genesis 10:10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar.
This is a turning point, Babel. In the land of Shinar, or Sumer, this is the first organized attempt to consolidate all power, political, military, economic, apart from God.
It's the foundation for the Tower of Babel story in the next chapter. The goal was human glory, human unity, human security, without any reference to the Creator.
So Nimrod isn't just a historical person. He represents a type, a spirit.
Exactly. The You Need Faith in Jesus team identifies the spirit of Nimrod as the prototype for the spirit of Antichrist. It's humanism exalting itself, centralized power, monumental building projects, and a rejection of the divine command to scatter and fill the earth.
And that spirit, that legacy continues. We see it explicitly tied to later empires.
We do. Centuries later, the prophet Micah in Micah 5:6 refers to the land of Assyria as the land of Nimrod. So the rebellious spirit of Babel became the institutional DNA for the great Mesopotamian empires that would constantly oppress God's people.
So what's the lesson from Nimrod for us today when we see these massive, centralized power structures all around us?
The lesson is sobriety. It's a call to not be impressed by the mighty ones of this age who build monuments to their own glory. The text teaches us that these earthly kingdoms, founded on defiance, are always temporary.
Our focus should be elsewhere.
On the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem, we have to learn to look past the splendor of temporal power and see its fleeting nature.
A necessary and a very stark reminder. From Nimrod's kingdom, the text then follows the expansion of this Hamitic line.
Right, into the great Assyrian cities. This is in Genesis 10:11-12.
Let's read that. Out of that land went forth Asher and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth and Calah, and risen between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city.
Now, there's a bit of a textual debate here. Did Nimrod go out and build Nineveh, or did a man named Asher, a son of Shem, flee from Nimrod's kingdom and build it?
But either way, the result is the same.
The result is the same. The great Assyrian cities are founded, and Nineveh, of course, becomes the star of that show.
The capital of the Assyrian Empire, known for its power and its cruelty.
Yes, a hub of intense wickedness. But that's not the whole story of Nineveh, is it?
No, it becomes the stage for one of the greatest displays of God's mercy.
The Book of Jonah. This city, founded in a tradition of rebellion, becomes the site of one of history's greatest revivals. It shows that God keeps his eye on these great urban centers, not just for judgment, but for redemption.
And Jesus himself confirms the significance of Nineveh.
He does. In Matthew 12:41, he says, "The men of Nineveh shall rise in judgment with this generation and shall condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonas, and behold, a greater than Jonas is here." He uses their repentance as a benchmark.
So what does this mean for Christians living in the huge, complex, often wicked cities of today?
The application is that we have to see our cities as modern Ninevehs. They are not lost causes. They are high-priority targets for the mercy of God. We're called to be Jonahs to our cities, believing that great repentance is always possible.
I love that. Okay, after Assyria, the text brings us back to Mizraim, back to Egypt. And this is where we meet some of Israel's most famous enemies.
Yes, Genesis 10:13-14 lists more descendants, but there's a crucial note in parentheses.
Let's read it. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim, and Caphtorim.
There it is, Philistim, the Philistines. This is their origin story.
And it's crucial. It tells us they came from the Casluhim and Caphtorim,
who are widely identified with the Sea Peoples who migrated from the Aegean, probably from Crete, which is Caphtor.
So the Philistines weren't native to the land of Canaan. They were invaders?
They were non-indigenous migrants who settled on the coast, and they became the most persistent physical enemy Israel faced, constantly testing the faith of men like Samson and David.
They were a constant thorn in the side. But even their fate was in God's hands.
Completely. The "you need faith" in Jesus' team analysis points out that God sovereignly determined their end, just as he allowed their rise. We see it in the prophets.
Jeremiah, for instance.
Yes, Jeremiah 47:4 says, "The day that cometh to spoil all the Philistines, for the Lord will spoil the Philistines." God is in complete control of their destiny.
So this reality of God raising up a physical adversary to test his people, what does that teach us about our own struggles?
It highlights the reality of spiritual warfare. Just as Israel faced these very real, very powerful enemies, the church faces spiritual adversaries.
So the application isn't about fighting physical enemies.
No, not at all. It's about recognizing the true source of the conflict. Our struggle isn't ultimately against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness. The action item is to put on the whole armor of God, knowing the battle is spiritual.
And that leads us right into the final group from Ham's line, the Canaanites, the tribes destined for judgment.
Right. Genesis 10:15 and 19 gives this incredibly detailed list of the tribes living in the exact land God had already promised to Abraham.
The text is so specific. And Canaan begat Sidon his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgasite, and it goes on and on.
The specificity is the point. It's laying a legal and historical foundation for the conquest to come. You see the Jebusites who held Jerusalem, the Hittites, the Amorites.
And then verse 19 draws the map, and it includes some infamous names.
It does. It describes their border as going unto Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim.
That's chilling. To include Sodom and Gomorrah in their territory is a direct foreshadowing of judgment.
It is. It theologically justifies the later command to conquer the land. This wasn't arbitrary violence. It was God executing a long-delayed judgment for systemic, deep-seated sin idolatry, sexual immorality, even child sacrifice.
But God was patient. That's a key point from the source material.
Incredibly patient. In Genesis 15:16, God tells Abraham that the conquest won't happen for hundreds of years because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. He waits centuries, but when the cup of iniquity is full, judgment comes.
And the prophets look forward to a day when that spirit of the Canaanite is finally gone for good.
Yes, Zechariah 14:21 has this amazing vision of a purified future, saying, "In that day there shall be no more the Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts." A final cleansing from all idolatry.
So for us, living in a culture that often feels very Canaanite, the application is clear.
It's a call to holiness, a call to remain separate from unrighteous practices. Our job is to hold the line of holiness, to live as lights in the darkness, while we wait for Christ's return to cleanse the earth completely.
That's a heavy but necessary word. So after detailing Ham's entire line, the chapter gives a summary that sets up the tension for Genesis 11.
It does. Genesis 10:2-1 says, "These are the sons of Ham, after their families, after their tongues, in their countries and in their nations."
After their tongues. That's the key. This chapter gives us the result, different languages, before the next chapter gives us the cause.
The Tower of Babel. It's a brilliant literary structure. Genesis 10 is the what, and Genesis 11 is the why. The confusion of languages was a divine judgment to curb that unified anti-God rebellion of Nimrod.
God fractured their communication to force them to obey the command to scatter.
He did, so the language barrier was a judgment, a curse. But the gospel redefines its purpose.
This is one of the most amazing connections in the Bible. The curse of Babel is spiritually reversed.
At Pentecost, in Acts chapter 2, and it's not reversed by making everyone speak one language again. It's reversed by the Holy Spirit unifying people through their diverse languages.
Let's hear the verse.
Acts 2:6 says, "Now when this was noised abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language."
So the very thing that was a barrier becomes a bridge for the gospel.
Exactly. Tongues, which were a tool for scattering, become the tool for gathering. The church is built from every tribe and tongue. The "You Need Faith in Jesus" team emphasizes this as a direct challenge to us.
And that challenge is the practical mandate.
It is. The action item for you listening is to see linguistic diversity not as a problem, but as God's ordained vehicle for his own glory, to ensure his praise is sung in every single language that was born out of Babel.
That's incredible. And it sets the stage perfectly for the final and most important line in the Table of Nations, the line of Shem.
The preserved seed, the line through which the entire plan of redemption will flow. It begins in Genesis 10:21. "Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder, even to him were children born."
Shem is listed last, which often signals importance in Hebrew writing. and the text immediately narrows the focus.
It does. By calling him the father of all the children of Eber, it's giving us the origin of the word Hebrew. The camera is zooming in. While Japheth and Ham were populating the world, this line is being meticulously tracked toward one man, Abraham.
We see his sons, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, and so on. And then the line progresses in verse 24.
And Arphax begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber. A straight line. But then the very next verse gives us this critical historical timestamp.
This is Peleg, Genesis 10:25. And unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan.
Peleg means division. And that phrase, for in his days was the earth divided, is huge. The consensus, especially in the sources from the UNFIJ in Jesus team, is that this refers to the linguistic and human dispersion after the Tower of Babel.
So this is a timestamp. This is when it happened.
This is when it happened. But here's the theological beauty of it. While the earth is being divided in judgment, while humanity is being scattered in chaos, God is quietly preserving one single specific seed line through Peleg.
So human failure on one side, divine selection on the other.
Perfectly put. And that line, of course, connects directly to the ancestry of Christ in Luke 3:35. It's a powerful reminder that in the midst of global chaos, God's redemptive plan is surgical. It's precise.
So when we look at our fractured world and feel overwhelmed, what's the application?
The practical step is to trust God's specific, personal plan over the chaotic spectacle of world events. As believers, we're grafted into that heritage. Our trust isn't in nations or politics, it's in the precision of God's sovereign design.
Now, Peleg had a brother, Joktan. His line goes in a different direction but becomes very significant.
Very significant, especially economically. Joktan's descendants are listed from Genesis 10:26 through verse 30. They go on to settle a large part of the Arabian Peninsula.
The list is long: 13 sons, Almodad, Shelef, Hazarmaveth, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah.
And those last 3 names are key. While this line is separate from the messianic path of Peleg, they become world famous for their resources.
Gold and spices.
The best gold and spices. Ophir was synonymous with the finest gold in the ancient world. Havilah, also known for gold. Sheba, for spices and frankincense.
And we see that wealth being used for God's purposes later on.
We do. In 1 Kings 9:28, it says King Solomon's ships went to Ophir and brought back hundreds of talents of gold for the temple.
So the wealth of these nations, who were outside the direct covenant line, was consecrated to the worship of the God of Israel.
It's a beautiful picture of God's plan for all the world's resources. The wise men who came to worship Jesus, bringing gold, frankincense, and myrrh, they almost certainly came from the descendants of this Joktanite line.
Their gifts, their wealth, serving the King of Kings.
And that points to the ultimate vision we see in Revelation 21:24, where it says, the kings of the earth will bring their glory and honor into the New Jerusalem.
So the final application here is about our perspective on everything.
Yeah.
On the world's resources.
Exactly. The action item is to see the cultures, the technologies, the arts, the resources of the world, not as things to be shunned, but as potential treasures to be consecrated to Christ. Every good gift finds its true purpose in serving him.
So we've tracked all 3 lines, Japheth, Ham, and Shem. The chapter then ends with this powerful summary statement.
It ties it all together. Genesis 10:31-32 reads, These are the sons of Shem. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
And traditionally, scholars count 70 nations from this list, a number that often symbolizes fullness or totality in the Bible.
It does. And you have to understand how unique this document is. No other ancient culture produced anything like it, a document that argues for the shared brotherhood of all humanity.
And as the UNFIJ in Jesus team points out, that has profound implications.
It strikes at the root of all racism and prejudice. It insists that all people are of one blood. We share a single common ancestor in Noah, and before him, Adam.
So this scattering, born out of judgment, sets the stage for the greatest promise of gathering.
It's the necessary backdrop for God's call to Abraham in the very next chapter. God scatters to judge sin, but immediately calls one man to begin the process of gathering.
That famous promise in Genesis 12:3.
And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed.
Which finds its ultimate cosmic fulfillment in the final book of the Bible.
In Revelation 7:9, John's vision. After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb.
from 3 families scattering across the earth to an innumerable multitude from every single one of those families gathered together. It's the whole story.
The whole story. God scatters to judge, and he gathers to redeem. And we, the church, are the agents of that gathering.
What an incredible journey through one chapter. We've covered the Toledot, the expansion of Japheth, the rebellion of Nimrod, the origins of the Philistines and Canaanites, the reversal at Pentecost, and the preservation of the Messianic line through Shem.
And this deep understanding is really made possible by the meticulous work of groups like the You Need Faith in Jesus team, who ensure these ancient texts speak with power and clarity to us today.
So to leave you with a final thought to mull over, based on this amazing material. If God, as Acts 17 confirms, truly determined the bounds of our habitation back in the days of Peleg, how should that knowledge change the way you view global conflicts today? How does it affect the way you see borders, migration, and the absolute urgency of global missions?
Think on that tension between God ordaining a boundary and sinful humanity fighting over it, and continue to explore the scriptures because every name, every detail points to the stunning global scope of God's love.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Genesis chapter 10.